This happened a few months ago. I was driving through my small town looking for ideas for my podcast about urban legends. I parked my old sedan by the creek. The night was quiet, and I felt a little uneasy, but I thought it would be a good place to record. I took out my recorder and switched it on. It was dark. The sound of water flowing was soothing. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I scanned the area, trying to see if I could spot anything interesting. That's when I noticed a flickering light across the creek. At first I thought it was a campfire, but it flickered quickly, like a bulb that's about to go out. I felt my heart race. Was it just my imagination? I needed to find out what it was. I grabbed my phone and stepped out of the car. The air was cool and I heard rustling behind me. I jumped, but then I realized it might just be a loose branch. I walked closer to the water. The light kept flickering. I thought about calling out, but I hesitated. I felt like someone was watching me. I glanced back at my car, sitting all alone in the dark. I went back several times over the next few nights. Each time I heard distant laughter, sometimes floating over the water. At first, I thought it was a prankster, but I never saw anyone else around. My heart began to pound more each night, and I recorded everything. I was hoping to catch something interesting for my podcast, but that feeling, a sense that something was wrong, never left me. I started asking locals about the creek. They shared strange stories. There were tales of missing pets and odd figures in the woods at night. Mrs. Keller, a woman I spoke to, looked scared when she told me about her dog that vanished one night while walking near the creek. She heard laughter too. I listened, but part of me thought it was just folklore. Still, the fear in her eyes stuck with me. Then came my last visit. I parked again, but the creek was quieter than usual. The flickering light was gone, but I suddenly heard the laughter again. It felt closer this time. My heart was racing as I turned around, scanning the shadows. I called out, "Hello?" but there was no response. A chill settled over me. I was about to leave when I saw it. A figure standing behind a tree. It was just there, not moving. I froze. I called again, "Hello?" Nothing. I gripped my phone, ready to record, but then I blinked. The figure was gone. That night still haunts me. I remember the feeling of dread. I didn't want to know what that light was or who was laughing nearby. I learned to avoid the creek after dark, but deep down, I wonder if I stirred something in the dark. What really lies by the creek after dark? I'll never truly know. I tried to put the creek out of my mind after that night, but it lingered like a bad dream. My podcast became a distraction, and I threw myself into researching other urban legends, but the laughter and flickering light haunted me. I had a sense of unfinished business, a thread I couldn't let go. Several weeks later, I decided to visit the local library. I needed to dig deeper into the history of the creek. As I walked in, the musty smell of old books mixed with the quiet hum of the library filled me with a sense of urgency. I made my way to the local history section and started flipping through dusty volumes. Old maps and photographs showed the creek in various stages of its history. Then I found something odd, a news clipping from decades ago. It detailed a tragic incident involving a group of kids who'd gone missing near the creek. They had been playing on the banks and just vanished. The article mentioned something about the local authorities searching for them but never finding a trace. My stomach twisted. What if the laughter I heard was connected to that? I rushed home, my mind racing. I pulled out my notes and started connecting dots. The incident, the laughter, and even Mrs. Keller's dog felt too intertwined to ignore. I wondered if the stories of missing pets were connected. My heart thumped loudly as I recalled the tales I'd heard. Each seemed to amplify my fears. Later that evening, I found myself back in my car, parked by the creek again. I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to confront whatever it was. I brought my recorder, taking deep breaths to steady my nerves. The night was still and heavy, but I was determined to get to the bottom of it. As I walked down the path beside the creek, a sense of foreboding washed over me. I turned on the recorder. "If there's someone here, I want to hear you," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. The trees seemed to creak in response, and I felt shivers crawl down my spine. Then, just like before, I saw the flickering light. It was faint at first, but then brighter, shining through the trees. I felt drawn to it, despite every instinct telling me to run. I stepped closer, the laughter breaking the silence again, this time more distinct. It was a chorus of childlike giggles echoing across the water. Suddenly, the light blinked out unexpectedly. The laughter faded, but a new sound reached my ears, a soft whisper, almost like a chant. My heart pounded. It was right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. The whisper stopped. I could hear nothing but my own breathing. Maybe it was just the wind, but deep down I knew better. That's when I noticed something moving near the water's edge. A dark shadow shifting under the pale moonlight. My breath caught in my throat. I stood frozen, half wanting to turn away and half wanting to step closer. Then, I saw it more clearly. A shape, small and oddly familiar. I took a step back and it seemed to respond, retreating slightly from the light. My eyes adjusted and I gasped. There was something there. Something that looked like an old toy, half buried in the mud. I hesitated, caught between fear and curiosity. I had to know, I had to see what it was. As I took cautious steps toward the water, my phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. I fumbled to pull it out, and that's when I realized. There was movement at the tree line, shadows flickering in the darkness watching me. I turned and ran. I sprinted back to my car, the headlights cutting through the darkness like a knife. My heart raced as I fumbled with my keys, trying to unlock the door amid a swirl of panic. Just as I slipped inside and locked the door, I glanced back at the trees. The flickering shadows had disappeared, but the feeling of being watched still clung to me. I took a moment to breathe, reminding myself I was safe inside the car. The hum of the engine grounded me, but I knew I needed to process what had just happened. I pulled out my recorder, the one I had hoped would capture something meaningful. Instead, it picked up nothing but the sound of my shaky breaths and the occasional rustle of leaves. I felt foolish for thinking I could confront whatever lived by the creek, but as I drove away I couldn't shake the image of that dark shape. An old toy. What did it have to do with the missing children? I needed to know more, and that meant returning to the creek. The next day, I went back to the library. I found a separate section dedicated to local folklore and legends. There was a thread connecting various tales of lost children, whispered secrets, and warnings about the creek. I scribbled down notes, piecing together fragments of stories that seemed to echo the history of the very place that terrified me. One peculiar story caught my eye. A woman who had lost her son decades ago. He had vanished near the creek and she swore she still heard him laughing when the moon was full. The details matched too closely. My gut twisted again as I wondered if Mrs. Keller had heard something similar. I decided to speak with her. I knocked on her door that afternoon, my heart racing again. When she answered, I immediately noticed the tired lines etched on her face. Still, her eyes sparkled with warmth, and she invited me in without hesitation. "I'm so glad to see you, dear," she said, fussing around her cluttered living room filled with knickknacks. As I sat down, I felt a wave of comfort, but quickly reminded myself of the questions that lingered. "Mrs. Keller, have you ever heard anything strange near the creek? Like laughter or whispers?" I asked, my voice a bit shaky. Her expression shifted. "Oh, the creek has its stories," she said gravely. "Children have always played there, but some never come back. Legends of lost souls. Just try to stay away, dear, it's safer that way." "Did you ever lose anyone? Maybe a pet or a child?" I pressed gently, desperately hoping she had insight. She hesitated, the joy in her eyes fading. "Many years ago," she finally murmured, "we lost our dog. And sometimes," she paused, "I could swear I hear him near the creek at night." My skin prickled. It seemed the stories were deepened by reality. I needed to find that toy, the one that had stirred everything within me. I thanked Mrs. Keller and quickly left, my mind racing. As I returned to my car, I spotted a group of kids playing nearby. Their laughter filled the air, but it sounded different, more echoing, like the laughter I had heard by the creek. For a moment I stood frozen, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach. Just as I was about to leave, something caught my eye. One of the kids was holding a toy. It looked remarkably similar to the one I saw near the creek. My pulse quickened. I had no idea what this meant, but I knew I had to investigate further. That's when I noticed the whispers fading back into existence, slipping through the cool air, teasing the edges of my consciousness once more. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what might come next. The shadow at the creek wasn't done with me yet. I fought the urge to walk over to the kids. Their laughter was bright and innocent, but I felt a heaviness in the air, like a curtain hiding something sinister. Instead, I leaned against my car and observed. The toy clutched in the child's hands looked almost alive, a faded blue color with chipped paint that reminded me so much of what I found by the creek. I decided I needed a closer look. As I approached, the kids noticed me and briefly paused their game. I forced a smile, but my heart thudded. "Hey there, that's a cool toy," I said, nodding toward the boy. He grinned, showing off the toy. "Yeah, I found it over by the creek." My stomach dropped. "You found it where?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "By the water," he replied, oblivious to the shiver that ran down my spine. "We play here all the time. Sometimes we hear funny noises coming from the trees." I forced a laugh, pretending it didn't shake me to my core. "Funny noises, huh? Like what?" "Just whispers and stuff. It's spooky, but we're not scared," he replied, and the other kids nodded in agreement, their eyes wide with excitement. I tried to stay calm. "Do you play near the creek at night?" "Not at night. That's when the shadows come out," said another girl, her voice barely above a whisper. Shadows. That word hung in the air like a threat. I wanted to ask more, but instinct told me I shouldn't probe too deeply with these children. They were innocent. Whatever magic or malevolence existed down by the creek was too dark for them to understand. "Okay, have fun," I said, stepping back. I felt like I was veering into dangerous territory. My mind raced back to Mrs. Keller's words. It wasn't safe. I had to remind myself of that. As I walked back to my car, the child's laugh echoed in my mind, a warning or perhaps a summons. When I finally sat down behind the wheel, I glanced down at my recorder. I pressed play, hoping for something, anything that might provide clarity. Once again, only silence filled the speaker, save for the faint rustle of my breath. I couldn't ignore this. I had to confront it. The mystery of the creek was pulling me in like a current, strong and unyielding. There were threads to pull, and I had to connect them before it was too late. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched across the asphalt. I drove slowly back to the creek, the unease growing with each curve in the road. When I finally parked, the air was alive with that familiar whispering, lingering at the back of my mind. I could see the flickering remnants of daylight filtering through the trees. My heart raced. I took a deep breath, clenching the steering wheel. Then everything went dark. A strange chill swept over me. No lights from the car, no crickets chirping. An oppressive silence fell, engulfing me in an empty void. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the tree line, a little boy with dark hair, just standing there, gazing straight at me. Panic surged. I was about to drive away when I heard it, a soft giggle unmistakably close. It was coming from the creek. I opened the car door, my instincts screaming at me to run. My feet felt glued to the ground while the laughter echoed again, each note taunting me. The boy just stood there, unmoving, his eyes dark and wide. He pointed toward the creek, and my breath caught in my throat. Without thinking, I stepped out, heart racing, wanting to know but terrified of what I was approaching. The giggles came again, this time mixing with the gentle trickle of water. I could hear them more clearly now, childish and playful. It felt wrong, so wrong, like a chasm waiting for me to fall in. I glanced back at my car. The comforting hum of the engine was gone, leaving only the unsettling silence. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to jump back inside and lock the doors. "Hey, kid," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you doing out here?" He didn't reply. Instead, he turned, his silhouette blending into the trees, and began to walk away from me toward the water's edge. My gut twisted. I shouldn't follow him. Everything I felt told me to retreat, but the pull of curiosity yanked me forward. "Wait!" I shouted, taking cautious steps. Fresh unease coiled around my chest as the boy kept strolling away, the laughter now mingling with splashes that sounded too close. "Please, just stay there." The creek came into view, a dark ribbon twisting through the land. The water glimmered, reflecting what little light remained. I squinted, trying to focus on the further bank where shadows writhed like tendrils reaching toward me. The boy paused at the edge, peering into the water, his face illuminated by an eerie glow. That's when I saw it, a movement beneath the surface, quick and darting. My heart raced. I felt like I was in a horror film where I was just waiting for things to explode. I needed to know what was happening, but dread anchored my feet in place. "Who's there?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. The boy didn't move, but the laughter continued, surrounding me like a heavy fog. It felt as if the very air thickened, tightening its grip. Then a whisper floated from the water, barely audible but distinctly clear. "Come play." I stumbled back, blood rushing in my ears. What was happening? "No, I can't play," I shouted, panic rising. My throat tightened. I spun back toward the road, but the ground felt different, shaky beneath my feet. The boy turned toward me, a smile creeping across his face, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes, something ancient and hungry. The shadows behind him seemed to pulse with life, drawing closer, and I felt a strange urge to cross the threshold into the darkness. Resolutely, I tore my gaze from him and bolted towards my car, fingers fumbling with the handle as I wrenched it open. But as I jumped inside, the boy's giggle echoed in my mind, taunting me, teasing me, calling me back. I threw the car in gear, but my heart sank as I saw the other children emerging from the trees, their eyes glimmering with that same unsettling light. Then everything went silent again, and I knew I couldn't leave. Not yet. The air outside was thick and suffocating as I sat in my car, adrenaline coursing through me. The children stood at the edge of the trees, their tiny figures framed against the dim light. I strained to see their faces, hoping to find something, anything, that would tell me they were just innocent kids playing in the twilight, but it wasn't there. Their expressions were blank, too still. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. I had to get out of this place. My heart raced as I cast wary glances towards the creek, wondering what strange games these children played. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, but I tried to compartmentalize my fear. I needed a plan. Just as I shifted into reverse, one of the kids broke away from the group. It was a girl with tangled hair that hung around her shoulders like shadows. She approached my window and I could see her eyes. They shimmered like the surface of the creek, inviting yet unsettling. "Are you going to play with us?" she asked, her voice sweet but underlined with a strange edge. I felt a chill creep down my spine. "No, I'm just looking for someone," I replied, trying to project normalcy. My heart pounded, and I wondered if I should just drive away. But something deeper pulled at me, a wrongness I couldn't ignore. "Then why don't you come down?" she urged, tilting her head slightly as if trying to see who else was in the car. "It's fun, we have games, and we can show you." "Show me what?" I blurted, not able to contain my rising panic. "Secrets," she whispered, and in that moment my decision was made. I could either escape this place or find out what lurked behind that darkness. Something inside me screamed to drive away, but every fiber of my being was drawn to the mystery unfolding before me. "Can you tell me what kind of secrets?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. Her smile widened, and the shadows around her seemed to dance, the kind that come alive when no one's watching. "Come play." My instincts screamed at me again, but I needed answers. With a shaky breath, I opened the door just enough to slip out. I didn't want to, but curiosity won over fear. It often did. The moment my feet touched the ground, the other children closed in, nearly surrounding me. They chattered softly among themselves, their voices rising and falling like the water nearby. As I followed the girl toward the creek, I felt a sudden rush of cold air, like a warning. "What are your names?" I asked, forcing my words past the tightening in my throat. They giggled again, the sound echoing eerily in the stillness. "We have names when we play," chimed the boy from before, his voice jubilant. "But we like to be called the Hollow Ones." The name sent a spike of fear through me. Before I could react, water splashed at the edge of the bank, and from the shadows beneath the surface, shapes began to rise. My breath caught in my throat again as I stared, horrified and entranced. What was happening? "Let me show you the first secret," the girl said, and as she stepped forward I realized too late that I was already stepping into a world I might never escape. Just then an arm reached out from the water, glistening with droplets like stars in the night sky. Something wasn't right. I gasped, feeling the pull of something much darker than I could comprehend. I froze. The sight of that arm felt like ice pouring through my veins. It was impossibly long and thin, moving in a slow, deliberate manner. I caught the glint of something sharp at its edge, and my fight-or-flight instinct roared to life. "What is that?" My voice trembled, and I instinctively took a step back. The Hollow Ones giggled, a sound devoid of joy, a cruel mimicry of childhood laughter. They swayed closer, encircling me like an unseen net tightening around prey. The girl's smile had transformed from eerie to predatory. "A friend," she said, her words unfurling like fog rolling across the creek. "Want to meet him?" Before I could reply, the hand fully emerged from the water. It wasn't a hand, not really. Instead, it belonged to a figure that pulled itself from the murky depths. Its skin was mottled, a ghastly shade of gray, and its eyes glowed with a sinister light. The thing leaned toward me, and I realized it had no mouth, just an endless void where one should have been. I stumbled backward, heart racing. "No, I can't." But the children surged forward, blocking my escape. Their laughter droned out my voice, and I felt dizzy as panic threatened to overwhelm me. I looked again toward the creek, searching desperately for an escape route. I should have driven away. I should have listened to my instincts. "Come play," the girl urged again, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet yet terrifying. "You wanted to know our secrets." My pulse quickened, and I pressed my back against my car, struggling to breathe fully. "I was wrong. I don't want to play." The figure from the creek paused, its unblinking gaze on me as if weighing my words. The Hollow Ones quieted, leaving a heavy silence in the air. "Then what do you want?" the girl asked, tilting her head in a way that reminded me of a predator sizing up its next meal. I just want to leave," I stammered, feeling helpless against the darkness surrounding me. For a second I thought the figure shifted slightly, its gaze lingering on the other children. The girl's smile faltered, a flicker of something primal crossing her face. Before I knew it, I took a deep breath and summoned whatever courage I had left. "Let me go." In that instant, the spell seemed to break. The laughter turned to shrieks of delight, the kind you'd hear on a playground. I took my chance and bolted, my heart hammered in my chest as I sprinted through the trees, branches whipping at my arms. The laughter from behind me turned into growls. I could hear footsteps chasing me, quickening with every heartbeat. I cursed myself for stepping into their twisted world. I pushed forward, adrenaline guiding my flight until I broke through the tree line and spotted my car. I fumbled for the door handle, scrambling inside just as a shadow lunged at my side. Slamming the door shut, I barely locked it before the figure collided against the vehicle, making it shake. I turned the key, heart hammering as the engine rumbled to life. "Drive!" a part of me screamed. But as I pressed the gas, my eyes caught the Hollow Ones gathered by the creek, their faces twisted in glee. The girl lifted her hand, moving it slowly, beckoning me back toward them. Then everything went dark as I turned the corner too quickly, the headlights swallowing the night. I didn't look back. I just drove, driven by the need to escape that place I shouldn't have entered. But as I sped away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness hadn't let me go, and what I had encountered would be following me for much longer than I'd anticipated. I drove fast, the road a blur beneath me as panic clawed at my chest. I had to get away from that place, but the further I went, the stronger the feeling grew that I wasn't truly free. The night seemed to close in around my car, shadows deepening where the moonlight couldn't penetrate. Once I was on the main road, I forced myself to breathe. Inhale, exhale. I had to think logically. Maybe I had imagined it all. Maybe it was a prank pulled by local kids, but a part of me knew better. I'd felt the cold grip of fear when that thing emerged from the water. I couldn't shake the images from my mind, the hollow ones, their smiling faces, the way they moved. I took the next left, instinctively heading toward the nearest diner. The neon lights flickered in the distance, promises of warmth and safety. I parked and hurried inside, shaking off the chill that clung to my skin. I felt exposed, the eyes of the few customers boring into me like lasers as I took a seat in the corner. But the familiar sounds of clattering plates and casual conversations did nothing to ease my nerves. I ordered coffee, hoping the caffeine would steady my shaking hands. Each sip felt like molten fire, waking me up, grounding me in something solid. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. After my third cup, I decided to confront the shadows hovering in my mind. I pulled out my phone and searched for anything about the creek, the legends or stories surrounding it. Was I the only one who had encountered something that night? As I scrolled through articles, a shiver traveled down my spine. The creek had a history, one dark and twisted. The legend said that a group of children had drowned there decades ago, their spirits lingering in a never-ending game, seeking new playmates. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. This wasn't just some small-town folklore, it was a warning. Suddenly, a movement caught my attention. The diner door swung open and a chill gust of wind blew in. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with dark circles under her eyes, turned to me. "Are you all right? You look a bit pale, honey." I chuckled nervously, trying to dismiss my fear. "I'm fine, just a rough evening." She narrowed her eyes, studying me intently. "You weren't out by the creek, were you?" My stomach dropped. "How do you know about that?" She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You're not the first one to come in here after dark, freaked out." "What do you mean?" "They say if you see the hollow ones, you're marked. You can't just leave. They'll always come for you." My pulse raced. "What can I do?" She shook her head. "Just don't go back, and don't look for answers." I swallowed hard, but those words were like a countdown in my head. I had to know more. If I had been marked, then I had to face it head on. "What happens if I do?" "That's when they come to play," she replied, her eyes widening with fear. I could feel the weight of her words settle over me, a thick fog that made it hard to breathe. I frowned, suddenly desperate. What does that even mean? But before she could answer, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of laughter echoing across the diner. I turned towards the door, heart racing again. Then everything went cold. That's when I saw them, watching from the shadows beyond the glass. The laughter continued, high-pitched and whimsical, like wind chimes caught in a storm. I glanced back at the waitress, her face now pale as she looked toward the door. "Get out of here," she whispered, urgency threading through her voice. "What? I can't just leave." My voice was a frantic hiss, but deep down I knew I couldn't ignore the pull of that laughter. It was like a magnet drawing me closer. The diner shrank away as I stood, my legs carrying me toward the door against my will. As I crossed the threshold into the night, the air grew heavy and oppressive. The laughter swirled around me like smoke, wrapping around my throat. I looked out into the darkness. At first I saw nothing, just the empty street stretching ahead. But then they appeared, figures emerging from the shadows, their smiles wide and unnaturally bright. I took a step back, heart pounding in my chest. "Don't look at them," the waitress shouted, her voice faint now. I felt her hand catch my arm, trying to pull me back inside. But the hollow ones were closer now, their movements fluid and eerie. I couldn't help but stare, fascinated and horrified at the same time. "What do you want?" I shouted, trying to sound defiant, but my voice cracked, betraying my fear. The figures stepped closer, their laughter now drowning out reason. I could hear whispers beneath the laughter, teasing, cajoling, a language I couldn't understand. One of them, a girl, maybe 7 or 8, bent down and scooped up a handful of dirt, letting it slip through her fingers slowly. "Come play with us," she said, her voice light and melodic. "It's so much fun. We never stop." I felt the breath catch in my throat. What do you mean? The words slipped out before I'd thought them through. There was something chilling about her gaze, as if they were inviting me into a game with no rules. Don't listen to them, the waitress screamed, but I could feel her grip on my arm loosening as my senses dulled, drawn into their world. I realized then that the diner had fallen silent. The patrons peering at the spectacle looked wide-eyed, some covering their mouths as if they were witnessing something sacred. Fear twisted in my gut. Was this a dream, or had I slipped into a nightmare where the lines of reality blurred? The little girl smiled wider, revealing small, pointed teeth that glimmered in the low light. Don't be scared. You can join us forever. Her words echoed, a promise that chilled me to the core. But before I could answer, the shadows shifted behind them. Shapes moved, growing larger, darker, something looming in the periphery of my vision. My heart raced as I took a step back, pulling harder from the waitress just as something brushed against my leg. That's them, she cried, panic in her voice. They're coming for you. Everything went dark in an instant. The laughter faded, replaced by a deep silence. I felt myself pulled out of the trance, stumbling backward into the safety of the diner, gasping for breath. I slammed the door shut behind me, locking the darkness outside. But that darkness lingered in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the game wasn't over yet. I could still hear the laughter, echoing somewhere deep inside me. What was that? I gasped, looking at the waitress, but her eyes were wide, reflecting a fear that mirrored my own. I needed to understand. I had to confront whatever this curse was, and somehow I would find a way to break it. That's when the diner lights flickered, and I knew something even worse was lurking just beyond my sight. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even inside the diner. I glanced at the door, half expecting the laughing children to burst through at any moment. The waitress gave me a tentative smile, but there were shadows under her eyes that told a different story. Listen, you might want to leave, she said quietly, glancing nervously toward the windows. But don't go to the creek. If you think you've seen things, trust me, it can get worse. You may have attracted their attention. My heart raced as I processed her words. What do you mean? I demanded. What are they? It's not just folklore, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Some say they're spirits of lost children, trapped between worlds, hungry for playmates, and once they find you, they won't let you go. I shivered, an icy tendril of fear creeping down my spine. I need to confront whatever this is. I can't just walk away. She shook her head, urgency filling her posture. You don't understand. They don't see it that way. You're a part of their game now. Every time you face them, they change the rules. You might think you're being brave, but... A sudden loud crash interrupted her. The door swung open forcefully and the light flickered again, spilling chaotic shadows into the diner. My heart sank as I turned toward the entrance. The laughter came rushing back, loud and haunting, flooding the small space like a dark tide. The little girl from before stood framed in the doorway, her smile stretching impossibly wide. The other hollow ones crowded behind her, their faces now obscured in shadow, but their eyes shining brightly, reflecting an otherworldly hunger. Come play, they chorused, their voices harmonizing in a chilling melody. The lady behind the counter froze, her hand covering her mouth, terror etched across her features. I felt the pulse of fear grip me anew, constricting my throat. The whispers wrapped around me, almost seductive in their tone. You want to know our secrets, they whispered, each word wrapping around my ears. I backed away, colliding into the wall, but the echoes held me captive. Then, I remembered the toy, the one I had seen by the creek, and instinct kicked in. What do you want from me? I shouted, forcing my voice to break through the noise. Why me? They giggled, the sound taking on a more sinister quality. You have played, now you are one of us, the girl replied, her eyes glinting. So come, you'll find it's more fun together. All at once the laughter stopped. Silence enveloped the diner, thick as fog. I could feel every heartbeat, every breath magnified, echoing back to me. Get away from me, I screamed, adrenaline coursing through me, pushing me forward. Trying to escape the hold they had over me, I hurtled through the diner's rear door, praying I wouldn't be followed. The cool night air slapped my face as I emerged outside, and I sprinted toward my car. I fumbled with the keys, fear clawing at my mind. "Drive, just drive!" I shouted at myself, throwing myself into the driver's seat. I slammed the door shut, locking it against the impending darkness. My heart thundered as I turned the ignition. Nothing. "Come on!" Panic spiked as the engine sputtered, refusing to start. Before I could gather my thoughts, the shadows loomed closer. I could sense their presence, invigorated, alive with the thrill of the chase. "It's not that easy," I heard the girl call, her voice echoing around me. "You have to choose." The flickering lights from the diner cast an eerie glow on the faces outside, reflecting glee as they danced just beyond my reach. I caught a glimpse of their outstretched hands, beckoning me to join them, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Despair sunk its claws deeper as I banged the steering wheel in frustration. "Again, you play! Again, again!" Their voices rang, blurring the line between excitement and danger. They hungered for me, and I felt their pull, like a siren song drawing me back to the creek, to the toys, to the laughter that intertwined with reality. Then I recalled the stories, the children who went missing, the laughter that echoed across the creek, the chill in the air. No one was ever found. My skin prickled as a realization hit me. I had become a part of this story, repeating the cycle of those who had come before. In one desperate attempt, I turned the key again, pressing down harder on the gas pedal. The engine roared to life, jolting me, and I tore away from the diner, the world blurring past me as I fled. But as I drove, the laughter grew faint, retreating yet lingering in the back of my mind. The road stretched endlessly before me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, waiting for the next moment to pull me back. And with every mile I wondered, would they come for me again? Would I ever truly escape what I had stirred beneath the surface? I moved to a different city shortly after that night. Sometimes I hear laughter on the wind, distant and haunting, and I can't help but think about the creek and the hollow ones. What might still lurk in their shadows? I guess I'll never truly know.